the meeting to order. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. and this is the regular meeting of the Kaneland Board of Education. We'd like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. Mr. McCauley, will you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Here.
Mr. Kleisner.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Dr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. McCauley.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Okay, with 7 members present, we have a quorum. Is there anything the board would like to move from consent to new business? No? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 7-0. The agenda is approved. It's now time for the board/superintendent salutes, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Rowland.
We have one salute this evening, and that is our very own Edmund Cook, who is a recent graduate of the University of Illinois. So I want to congratulate him on that.
I have 3 teachers in attendance that I'd like to thank. Mrs. Pascus was my 8th grade science teacher, Mrs. Axel was my 8th grade math teacher, and Mrs. Piccone was my 8th grade ELA teacher. Thank you all very much.
That's awesome. Congratulations. Okay. Tonight's consent agenda contains the following information. The following action items: approval of accounts payable and payroll January 2025, approval of the minutes of the January 13th, 2025 regular meeting, approval of personnel, approval of motion not to release closed session minutes from July through December 2024, approval of administration to begin preparation of the 2025-2026 budget, approval of Kaneland John Stewart Elementary book donation, and the following informational items: the student suspension data report, employee position report, the Freedom of Information Act report, the FOIA report, and field trip notification. At this time, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent items listed.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. Motion carries 7-0. Consent agenda is approved. Okay, it's now time for the public comment portion of the meeting. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. The board does not debate or engage in conversation during this time. I'd like to remind everyone to state your name and village of residence for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes with a 20-minute total length of time for any one subject. Those who speak are asked to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. And first up, we have Aaron Shore.
Good evening. My name is Erin Shore. I'm a community member and a parent of 3 students in the district. I currently serve the district as the department chair for student services at KHS. This proposal eliminates 2 counselors at the high school level, and the loudest argument for this is the student to counselor ratio. I have provided for you a detailed comparison chart inspired by the board packet for this evening. When looking at the school report cards online for the King County schools, the numbers don't match the board packet suggestions. As you can see, no single high school uses the role of the school counselor exactly the same. The high degree of personalization in the use of school counseling is not adequately conveyed in a simple student to counselor ratio. At Kaneland, we have worked for about a decade to create a strong college and career counseling services model. The CCRC, the College and Career Readiness Center, is a program to be proud of at KHS. When we were just 5 counselors, we could not get that program off and running. We provided that data with you to you last time. And we believe that if we can keep it strong, if we reduce it by 1 counselor, but not by 2. So I ask for you to be fully informed when making this decision.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, we have Hope Paskus.
Good evening. I'm Hope Paskus, the LRC Director at Harder Middle School, also known as the librarian. I want to thank you, first of all, for your service to our school district and community. We know that you're having to make some difficult decisions, but hopefully they're based on a background knowledge and education that we might have helped provide. Previous Kaneland boards of education and other school districts around us had to face the same decision that you're having to face now, and that's eliminating an LRC director position, a certified librarian. Districts have had to learn the hard way, as we have, that eliminating certified librarians is a mistake when evaluating student literacy skills. You're not getting rid of someone who only checks in books and puts them on a shelf, which incidentally, I don't ever do. You eliminate a unique whole school teaching position and the skills used and passed on to students and other teachers. I hope the scientific and school district data that was shared by the high school LRC director and myself helped you better understand the role of a certified librarian and its importance in student literacy skills. Research is one of the certified librarian's top skills. And we're happy to discuss any of the information that we shared and answer any questions that you might have about the literacy program through the LRC at any of our schools. It is my hope that instead of continuing to dismantle the library program in Kaneland today, as has been done in the past, I ask that you take the necessary steps to begin rebuilding it and thus invest in our students' literacy skills in the future. The first step is to stop the elimination of the LRC director position at Harder. I thank you again for your time and listening to our information, and look forward to you making the appropriate decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, we have Katie Soderstrom.
My name is Katie Soderstrom. I'm a resident of Elburn and parent of 2 children who attend Kaneland schools. I'm here tonight to comment about the proposed budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 with a focus on the KIPLA program. On January 13th, the proposed budget in front of the board contains a variety of district-wide educator and financial reductions, and reductions specifically targeting the KIPLA program. The KMAC building would no longer be used for personalized learning, and the KIPLA program would be split into 2 separate cohorts, both housed at 2 separate building locations in Sugar Grove. The cost of a needed $500,000 of HVAC repair in the KIPLA wing of the KMAC building and district-wide staffing costs have most likely contributed to this admin recommendation. At the January 13th meeting, prior parent concerns about cohort and program identity, building infrastructure adjustments, transportation for KIPLA students, staff training and education regarding the personalized learning modality, and its implementation with embedded KIPLA students, and concern about the lack of a concrete plan presented regarding these elements were brought forth. It should be noted that in the revised proposed budget being presented tonight by admin, none of these parent concerns have been addressed, nor have plans to address these parent concerns been acknowledged. As the parent of a KIPLA student, this once again concerns me. There are roughly 100 students who currently participate in the KIPLA program, and both students and parents are willing to directly work with the district admin and Board of Education to make the KIPLA program successful for the Kaneland district. We need to hear a commitment by district admin and the Board of Education to support this learning modality within KIPLA and embedded district-wide as appropriate. We need to hear a commitment to support and grow this program within the projected funding for the next 5 years. The KIPLA program is one of the first in the Kane County area and has drawn attention and interest in how this learning modality is implemented both in and outside of Kane County. Families are choosing to relocate to the Kaneland School District for this program. Families are choosing to enroll their student in the KIPLA program instead of local private schools. Kaneland families are interested in this program, but there are also Kaneland families interested in the Kipler program that are hesitant to commit because of the demonstrated lack of long-term planning and commitment to the personalized learning modality. The same demonstrated lack of long-term planning and commitment to this personalized learning modality could also be what leads to the risk of the program's demise. As a Kipler parent, I would ask the district and board to commit to the following: a verbal commitment to the support of the Kipler program and personalized learning modality over the next 5 years. A district-created written transition plan detailing the discussions and decisions over the next 6 months, February through July, about what Kipler students and families can expect regarding the proposed programming changes for the next fiscal year. A district admin representative who can provide updates to the Kipler transitions at monthly PTO meetings to ensure students and parents are staying up to date of proposed programming changes. This is also an opportunity for district admin to solicit student, staff, and parent feedback about how to make the proposed building and programming transitions successful. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, we have Amy Corbett.
Hi, my name is Amy Corbett, and I live in Elburn. I have 2 kids in the Kaneland School District. One is a student in 6th grade at Kipla. Based on the meeting that we had just a couple weeks ago and the message that came out, I would ask for the opportunity for public Q&A on this particular topic of just the budget changes. I believe that we deserve more information. This seems like very poor planning just in general over time that's led us to this. And I feel that you as a board always feel pressured and rushed to make a decision. Just as I'll bring up the track last year was something I felt you were very rushed on. Our voice as a school district was not used to oppose the TIF, which has a direct impact on our district. There will continue to be deficits because of that growth, but there has been consideration by the board to pursue legal action now, tying up district funds for something that might not be fruitful. The TIF was not just a municipal challenge for Sugar Grove, it was impactful for all of us, and we should have spoken up at that point as a district. I looked at just the effects of property value. I don't want to leave my home, my neighborhood, any of that, but I would consider leaving the district because of the limited resources that the district will provide for my children. When I looked at test scores, there's going to be a comparison slide presented today. And when you look at it, SAT scores, ours are 34. St. Charles is 69, Geneva 62. ELA for 3 through 8, 93.6% of our students are proficient, whereas St. Charles at 69.1 and Geneva is 61.7. If you reduce the number of MTSS teachers, they weren't considered teachers at our last meeting, I can only imagine what those scores are going to look like in the future. If the plan was to embed Kipla into a elementary school or within Harder, that should have been done from the very beginning. I'll also state that there are many people in this room physically, but there's plenty of people watching virtually that do not support this reduction. My son is going to speak in the second half, and he has quite a bit to share that was collected by the Kipla students that wanted to speak. They wrote out a notebook of information. So I would ask that you do not approve this budget as it's presented and give people more information on what our Kipla program will look like and what our district is going to look like if you have to make reductions and do it in the right places. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, we have Laura Ekstrom.
She's like 2 minutes away, so.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move to Sheila Albano, and then we'll come back to her.
Okay.
Yep.
She might be parking.
She can sit down and
Sounds good.
Hi, my name is Sheila Albano from Elburn. I have changed what I wanted to say tonight so many times that I now no longer have something written down to say. But I'm going to start with what I chose to wear tonight, which says Knights. It doesn't say Elburn, it doesn't say Sugar Grove, it doesn't say teachers, it doesn't say students, it doesn't say Kipla, it doesn't say track. It says Knights, because that is the community that we are and that we have been since we were conglomerated together in 1959. This district, actually, this room is full and out there, full of loss, pain, wounded, angry, sad. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time, and it won't be the last. This district, in some respects, is built on loss. The 4 towns lost their high schools to form this district, which they had always competed against each other. They were never a tandem, but that's what they chose to do. After that, down the road, when we had to close the 4 elementary schools in the 4 towns, that was catastrophic, and Sugar Grove lost their building completely. Later, when we had to move all the elementary school kids, every single one of them got bused from wherever it is they lived out to the old middle school, which is now the Kipla building. And the 7th and 8th grade got moved back up into the high school where it started. That worked out great for the elementary school kids. In the end, it was traumatic when it happened. It was not such a great thing for the 7th and 8th graders. And then later it got moved back again and put back into a middle school until there was a building of 780 filled with about 1,200 students. And that's how we ended up with this building, barely, which we're now fighting over, still having to pay off those bonds while we look at new bonds for fixing other things. And amongst all of that, we've lost teachers while they're teaching. We've lost kids in accidents and honored community members who've been a part of in and out of this district. And always, somehow, through the pain, we've come together. I urge all of us to look at this situation from that point of view. Because at the end of the day, on top of all of the loss, there has been resiliency, and there has been community, and there has been reach out, and there's been an attempt to understand. And I do not, I have to say it quickly, I do not agree with cutting the second counselor. I think that still needs to be looked at, because I think that all of the information that you got where all the pink stuff is that they're not supposed to be doing, that they are doing, I don't know how you're gonna fix that without hiring somebody else anyway. But at the end of the day, I want all of us to look for the best solutions and work together through the difficult pain that they're feeling, that our administration is feeling, that our parents are feeling, our kids are feeling, and our community is feeling. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is Mrs. Ekstrom here?
Yes, she's here. Sorry, thank you guys. I appreciate you switching that around for me. Had to drop my son off at basketball, so. Hi, my name is Lara Ekstrom. I live in the village of Virgil. And I just wanted to bring up a couple of brief things regarding the budget. I know last week we had talked, you guys had talked a little bit about how there were like hardly any to no administrative cuts in the budget, and I agree. I think that's a little, why are we cutting the really important teacher positions and counselor positions, and if we're not making any cuts administrative wise? And I just wanted to bring up something they do in the corporate world that I don't know if we can do here because I don't know the logistics, but my husband's company gave all the top earning executives a 10% cut last year because they needed to do it for their budget. So can we do something like that? Could we make some type of 5-10% administrative cut? I did the math on what salaries were last year, and it would be like $275,000 in salary if we cut 10% for all of our administrators, which to me is significant and could cover 2 to 3 student-facing positions. So that was one point, and then the other was like some of my fellow parents of Kipla students have said, we really want a solid plan for Kipla moving forward. I know that some of our administrative team at Kipla is already working on stuff But that's something that we as Kipla parents would really like to see, and see that commitment from the administration and the board to keep the program running. Otherwise, you're gonna start losing students from the program. This is the second year in a row we've had to stand up here in front of you and fight for our program, and if it's something that we have to keep doing, you're just gonna keep losing students. So, thank you very much, and have a great night.
Thank you for your comments. So, because there was limited public comment tonight, we'll go ahead and entertain 2 more people if anyone wants to speak that didn't get a chance to sign up. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Laura Chen, and I'm from Sugar Grove, and I have 2 students at Kaneland, one at Harder and one at Ignite. And I just wanted to urge the board to take more time before approving the budget as it stands. I think there's a lot of opportunity with Kipla the way it is. I just wanted to share, my daughter is there for her first year in 3rd grade, and she wrote a note for me to read. It says, Kipla is the best building. Her name's Heidi Chen, and she says, I really like the Kipla building because there's more space, and there's a better library there with access to books at her reading level. She's reading at a 7th grade level, but doing 3rd grade levels at other things. So we love that she has that opportunity to have materials for all the levels that Kipla supports. And we're really, we love the idea of a potential high school expansion to Kipla. I know that it's not happening right now, but we love the idea of it. So Heidi also says she likes spending time with the Empower kids. So she's in the 3rd through 5th grade, and she has friends in the 6th through 8th grade, and she grows from that, and they love, hanging with her. So it's a community, which I think we would lose if the programs went to 2 separate schools. I also feel that the unified program lead, like having a principal for Ignite, is really critical to the success of Ignite because it can be shaped overall as a full program, rather than it's a small part of one school here and it's a small part of another school here. I think there's a lot of benefits to having it as a designated school. And I will say, I work in Lisle, I grew up in Naperville, and every parent that I've talked to outside the district has been very interested in the Kipla program as it stands today. All the parents have said, wow, I really wish my district had something like that, and they're very interested about it. And I think that it's an asset right now for Kaneland to have. And kind of, if you change it the way the budget is proposing, I'm just not sure it'll have long-term success. And in fact, my family has been discussing, Heidi was at McDowell previously. We love McDowell. No, we love everybody at McDowell. And we just wanted to have Heidi experience the flexible learning at Ignite because she's so innovative and independent. And if the program moves to John Shields, that would be her 3rd school in her elementary school career at Kaneland, which she'd have to make new friends. And we're considering pulling her out of Ignite in that case, putting her back in McDowell, where we know and things are comfortable. But I just wanted to share with you what a wonderful experience she's had at Kipla so far. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, one last opportunity for public comment. Yes, sir.
Hi, Scott Stalkup. I have 3 kids in the district, and mine is really short, to be honest. As you guys go through your different business topics today with the curriculum and the staffing and everything, keep this one question in mind. How does this raise our scores in the education for our kids? Just keep that in mind. As I read through, and I haven't got through all of it, I'll be honest with that, but I read through quite a bit of it, and I can't justify it. How the curriculum that is laid out here, this doesn't tell me how it's going to raise the education for our kids. I mean, you can read in those package how poor we compare against our surrounding districts, Kane County, against the state, et cetera. So as you go through the decisions, that would be my question, is just ask yourself, how is that bettering the education for our kids? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, that concludes the public comment section of tonight's meeting, or the first public comment section. I want to remind everybody that there's a second opportunity near the end of the meeting to speak, so if you'd like to sign up, sooner rather than later, and we'd love to hear from you. Okay, proceeding into new business. The first item of new business is the approval of the budget planning of 2025-2026 and assumptions of the 5-year projections. Dr. Rowling.
Yeah, so we discussed this at the last meeting. Obviously, it was a topic of public interest. So we did bring back an adjusted, based on board feedback, we brought back an adjusted proposal that reduces the Kipler principal position and does not have an additional administrator on there. We also wanted to address some of the areas that were discussed at the last meeting. So we reached out to human resource directors for Kane County districts to get information on staffing numbers, then used the online report card for student counts. Some districts have multiple high schools, and in those cases where they gave us the specific information, we use averages. We especially look at like U46 where they have 5 or 6 high schools. And some of the directors gave us their contract language rather than direct counts. These numbers have are intended to provide context for some of the decision making, not as a specific guide to vary. Those numbers, as Ms. Short mentioned, a lot of people use these positions in different ways, so it's hard to get a hard apples to apples comparison. That being said, with the reduction in elementary MTSS intervention, we still maintain among the highest MTSS staffing in the county. The only area that would be exceeding us are 5 very specific Title I schools in District 300. With the middle school librarian, we would be in line with District 300, but would have less staff than many of the other schools in the county. And then finally, with the high school counselors, reduction, the counselor-student ratio at Kaneland will continue to be one of the lower ones in the county, with Geneva being slightly lower than us in that capacity. Overall, we are recommending the reduction of 31.28 positions that are spread across all levels and job areas.
Okay. Before we get into discussion, I wanted to make a quick statement. I don't know. I didn't write anything out. I don't like to read from you guys have seen me. Anyway. We've had a lot of emails come in. We've heard you. We've seen them. We're there. We're part of it. And we've read them. The questions you bring up, we address when we have the same questions. So I don't want you to feel like your voices aren't heard. This is a volunteer position for all of us. We all have jobs, and so as much as we'd love to respond personally to each email, it's very difficult to give you that. And I personally hate generic responses, and so I do you all the courtesy of not giving a generic, well, we received your email, thank you, response. It's just, to me, it's disingenuous, and I feel like the rest of the board feels that way as well. So we just want to know that we acknowledge the feedback, we appreciate the feedback, we embrace the feedback, and we address it. I want you guys to know that we have nothing to gain, the board and administration, from the failing of Kaneland. There's no ulterior motives, there's nothing behind the scenes, there's nothing that we benefit by this district not succeeding. So just please understand where our hearts are, and it's been a very difficult 2 weeks for all of us. I never imagined getting into this that I would have to make a decision like this that would impact so many lives, and it's not something we take lightly and treat with non-emotion, I guess, for lack of a better term. I'm not very eloquent. So anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know we heard you, we see them, we acknowledge them, and we appreciate the feedback. So don't feel like your voices aren't heard, okay? Because we're all one here, and we're gonna get through this together, and we're gonna succeed and push forward. So whatever tonight's decision is, just know that we all have the same goal, and that's the success of the district and the growth of our kids, our families, our constituents, in many different ways. So I'll shut up. So at this point, I'll open the table to discussion.
So I have a few things to say, but if people want to do something else, by all means, go ahead. But I might take a little time here. Okay, I'm taking time. So I had a chance to sit down with some KEA folks and speak folks and talk about the budget cuts. And I do not want to speak on behalf of those groups in any way. That's not my role. But I do think it's important that when those groups come talk to us, I know other groups have had the same experience, that we do voice what they say to us, especially because those stakeholders, you know, are the ones who are largely impacted by the decisions we're making tonight, right? So a couple of things I thought that they brought up that I thought were really important to say out loud was that over the last couple of, maybe the year or the last couple of months, we've spent all this time as a board trying to build really good rapport with these groups. And because of the nature of budget cuts, we're unfortunately kind of whittling away those relationships. And it's something we're gonna have to focus on trying to rebuild one more time, right? And so it's not something that we wanted to be in. As President Gonzalez said, we did not want to be here, but we do hear that those relationships are now strained, and we're gonna have to do some work to rebuild those relationships. The other thing was that the question came up, and I know it's a question we've all asked, do these budget cuts have to happen so rapidly? Is it possible to slow them down? Is it possible to think about taking some of the hit this year and some of the hit next year? And I know those are things that the admin team can address, but it was brought up, and I thought it was worth bringing up and mentioning. Probably the most important thing I took away from that conversation that night was that it's not necessarily that the cuts are happening. The cuts are happening, we know that we have to make these adjustments. But that the cuts are happening and people are feeling like they're not part of the conversation, right? Especially the people who are taking the brunt of those cuts are not feeling like they were part of the conversation of how those cuts were implemented. So this is probably more of a future suggestion, but certainly something I think we need to focus on as a board, as also the admin team, is that are there ways that we can involve those voices sooner? Are there ways for us to involve those voices throughout the process in real and meaningful ways? And I think what they expressed to me was that it's not that they want to have a say or a control over how these things happen, but that they want a chance to say what they think and then have a chance to discuss how their ideas could maybe be implemented, or maybe why their ideas won't work. And they had said to me very clearly, like, they don't always see everything from the top picture, and you know, and that's fair, but they are the people, you know, for lack of a better term, boots on the ground, and they wanted to tell you, like, okay, well, if you cut these MTSS positions, there are ripple effects that will happen here. If you cut these roles, there are ripple effects that will happen here. And they wanted to make sure that that was heard in that process. And then the last couple of things I think that we just have to really think about is there are programs that we've implemented, there are initiatives that we've put together that we were very excited about, and it is defeating from their point of view, probably from our point of view too, that because we have to make these cuts, these things are now going to fall apart, right? And that's a sad thing to have to say, because we're trying to build this culture of excellence. We're trying to build and address these issues that we have curricularly through test scores, through success and achievement, and these cuts are definitely going to make those goals a greater challenge, right? They're putting more walls up, not building bridges. And I think those are very valid points that they brought up to me, and I thought, you know, we as a board should at least hear what they had to say about those comments. And I was grateful that we've done this, where we've been able to meet with these groups now and have built this rapport. I want to keep doing that if we can. And I don't necessarily want it to be, you know, this is a pipeline where they tell me something and I say it to the board, but I thought this time that was actually an important thing to do. So thought I'd share that. Last thing is the other program kind of commentary, right? So a caution, I think, was expressed that when we built KIPLA, maybe we should have thought about doing it the reverse, whereas opposed to building it first and then stripping it back down and putting it in the classrooms, we should have test drived it in the buildings first and then built the building later after we test drove it, especially because our goal of having 20, 25 students per grade level, we've struggled to achieve that goal for a lot of reasons, right? And no one factor is the reason that happened, but just a cautionary tale that we built something that's pretty wonderful and amazing, and that we've benefited greatly from, and it is heartbreaking to see that not work now because perhaps we planned it wrong, and we need to worry about how we're going to plan things in the future. I think that's everything they expressed to me. I'm sure if I missed something, they can always touch base with me and let me know. But I thought I would share their point of views. I'm happy to address any questions that they had or that you might have about that conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly hard duality to say, like promoting a culture of excellence, but strong organizations have to make hard decisions all the time, and that's what makes them strong organizations. And it's very difficult, but there's so limited resources. It affects everything.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, Evan. I mean, as we've heard, I want to save every single thing that I've heard. I think every single thing that we've heard is like, well, that's amazing. We should keep that too, right?
Yeah.
But limited resources. It's hard to know what has to stay and what can't stay. Yeah.
I was going to say, I appreciate too all those comments that you made, and also that, like President Gonzalez said, we hear all the questions. Every public comment that's been up there are questions that we've had. You guys don't get to know that. You don't get to have those conversations that we're having our one-on-ones with each other, or having with Dr. Rowling, and it's very hard for you to, and I can see it, it's very hard for you to trust us in that aspect because you see your programs changing. I will say people that are in here with KIPLA, I was there all last year fighting with you, being at everything that I could be at and stuff like that. So I'm your biggest advocate when it comes to that. So your voice is being heard. But like Mr. Cook said, changes have to be made. We're not getting rid of the program, but we definitely need your voice. And I think that's something that we need to do better at too is admin. You guys have done a phenomenal job talking to staff, doing surveys, meeting with them, doing one-on-ones, opening your doors, being very approachable. So Dr. Rowling and Dr. Bogan, thank you for that. But the aspect of that communication plan, I hear that over and over again, especially, and I just want to start with KIPLA, parents that, okay, you didn't get rid of us. We ain't going anywhere. We're going to keep fighting for this. So now that we have to make a change, or we're going to make a change, what does that look like for us? So how can you best advocate? And that's the one thing I wanted to say thank you to them too, because I've learned a lot in this last couple of years. This is my 4th year, but in the last couple of years working with you guys, because you have been huge champions and advocates and have spent time, the same thing, talking to me, educating me, helping me, and then also wanting to put your feet in there too, going, what can I do? How can I bring you research? What else can our kids do? You've engaged your children to be a part of this process too, and so to take that model and what does that look like, and to do better by you guys too as we move forward. How do we do that? I want to be very mindful of that, and then also to Dr. Lawler's point, if there's anything other changes, and I'm not saying cuts or anything like that, but any other changes that come along, how can we be better advocates when we communicate those things to you guys? So,
just to piggyback on that, Mrs. Sippins, I'm not sure everybody knows this, right? I wouldn't have known this if I was a public member. Like sometimes when it's on the agenda, right, that's actually not a great time to brainstorm solutions, right? That's actually kind of too late to brainstorm solutions. Like we're already working through the logistics of things. It kind of has to happen before that. So I don't know how we get that out there, but we have to somehow get that out there that if there are things that are happening, we need to have that conversation weeks before it happens here at this moment. Not that public comment doesn't work. Public comment's great, but we need to find out a way to,
We need to put it out earlier.
Yeah.
That this is looming.
Yeah.
That we have to address it and allow stakeholders meaningful input and a chance to brainstorm some solutions, not just management by crisis.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's.
I think you said it perfectly.
That's what I'm not happy about this at all.
Yeah.
My one goal has been to develop, if nothing else, and among many goals, to develop a culture of excellence and have that start to pervade in our classrooms, starting at the elementary level, and everybody well prepared, all students receiving the best possible education to the greatest of their potential possible. If you've seen meetings, you know, I was a special ed teacher, and while MTSS is not supposed to be for special ed, it's an intervention to help the students, gen ed students who are struggling. And I've taught at the high school level. I see what that looks like, you know, our RTI, which was, I actually preferred RTI to MTSS, but that's, you know, neither here nor there. These interventions do make a difference. And it's not something that's easily quantified. Well, we have so many, you know, MTSS as opposed to that district has so many. It should be what the students need. I'm just disappointed that it's had to boil to a crisis budgetarily. And, you know, here it is. It's just rather unfortunate, and I know some of this is unavoidable. I get that. I've lived through districts that have, you know, I've taught in districts that have and a lot of this is mandates unfunded by the state as well. That, yeah, that we're boxed into a corner and have to spend our money on things other than excellence. On other things other than what make a difference in student learning.
I think that should be highlighted because the fact of the matter is, if we don't fix this budget crisis that we're in, the state will eventually have authority to take over the district, and then we lose local
heaven help
control.
us all.
There'll be no, you know, public comment or input or anything. It'll be state run, and so that's what we're risking.
Yeah.
You know, by not making these tough choices. It kills me that we've been backed into this, you know, corner. But it is what it is at this point. I mean,
I guess I am disappointed with the process. And it came to a head so quickly that meaningful input from stakeholders wasn't solicited earlier, or problem solving involving some of the stakeholders wasn't explored to the greatest extent possible. I understand this is what we're up against. This is the meal we have to eat.
So I think part of it, and this is not always an easy thing to say, is that we have to make these tough calls, right? We have to, we have no choice. But it's bad when we make the call and we didn't learn anything from the call, right? And so I think what we have to also do is say, we're gonna make this tough call, here is the commitment we're gonna make, so if we're in something like this again, here's how we're gonna do it differently. Here's how we're gonna do it so that it makes more sense. Here's how we're gonna do it, that we can maybe work with stakeholders, work with groups, like how can we learn from the pain, right? Because if you just have pain for no reason, that's a hard pill for everybody to swallow. But if you at least have like some kind of, well, we did it, but here's how we're gonna get through it, and here's also what we're gonna do next time, I think that helps, right?
What's our process improvement?
Yeah. I think those are things that we maybe, as a board, as an admin, we have to definitely address those.
Yeah.
I agree, and I think we've made great attempts and progress in engaging the community.
Absolutely.
So, you know, not to pat ourselves on the back, but we're making steps in that direction. Rome wasn't built in a day, and previous boards were ran very differently, and
Yes.
you know, we have fresh perspectives from administration, and so. But I agree. I think we can. I'm just happy that I take comfort in the fact that we all have that mindset, and we've already started that process.
Mhm.
And I agree. I would like to see a commitment from all of us to, you know, let's not see this again. Let's fix it, make conscious decisions, and remember that the decisions we make, some of this isn't us, right? The decisions we make are going to impact people for years to come, and so let's set up the future board members. Someday I'll be gone. Someday we'll all be gone. Let's set them up for success, and the kids to thrive, because this is terrible. I mean, this is really upsetting. I'm an emotional dude, and I'm holding back crying, but it's not like an easy call to make. You know, these are people's lives.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you said that, because I hope that the public, it's not lost on the public that that's how we feel, right? That we didn't come in here and like, we're gonna cut some budgets today and like just can't wait to get through it all. Like, we have struggled with this. I think emotionally, personally, yeah.
To reiterate, thank you, Dr. Rowley and Dr. Bogan, too, because you guys have bared the weight of doing a lot of the research and making the phone calls, and you've been running since you both were hired. I mean, since you've been on a fast train going. To Dr. Lawler and President Gonzalez's point, I think we need to add on to that. The work that you guys have done for process improvement later on is to then, like, the conversations like board members are having, what you went through and stuff like that, because then I think that is a great conversation, then that adds to even the strength of what you're proposing, you know, that it gives strength to the things that you guys have found too. So there might be some conversations that will add to that. So I think it's not to disparage what you guys have done. You guys have done an excellent job in such a short amount of time, and we've had to do it. It's not a choice. Like I said, it's very painful for every one of us. But, so we thank you for that. And then I think the lesson learned too is that another level of process improvement, that we can support the work, hear the voices, but also support that what you guys are finding too, or make changes and stuff. There might be some, you know, ulterior or other ways of looking at things too. So I think it's an added factor we can bring on next time.
okay. Any further discussion, further comment? All right. We'll go ahead and proceed to the vote. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approves the 2025-2026 proposed budget reduction plan and the 5-year assumptions as presented.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Abstain.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye. Motion passes 6-0. The 2025-2026 budget reduction plan and 5-year assumptions is approved.
President Gonzalez, can I just make a comment really quick?
Of course.
Yeah, so, just so everybody knows, the reason I abstained is because I have a personal investment in one of the budget items, and I did not think it was fair because I could not make an objective decision because of that personal conflict.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, usually we read this earlier in the meeting, but I know a lot of people were here for this particular topic. I want to go ahead and remind you that it's an open meeting, and so feel free to, if you have to go, if you have to be somewhere, you know, our feelings aren't going to be hurt. It's an open meeting. You're welcome to come and go as you please, so don't feel like you're being rude, or, you know, if you feel at this point like you want to carry on with your lives. The second item of new business is the approval of the kindergarten early entrance procedure and fees. Dr. Bogan.
Yes. Tonight you'll see in your board memo a proposal that is seeking to instate a $200 fee for early entrance to kindergarten. Back in October, Dr. Mumm presented about the process for early entrance to kindergarten, and along with that, there were some updates to the screener, adding a behavior screener and some change. As part of that, to offset the cost of that, we are proposing a $200 administrative fee to families to implement that process.
Discussion, questions?
Are there gonna be any waivers if they qualify for free and reduced?
So that's difficult because we wouldn't know if they would qualify for free and reduced
I'm
yet,
just-
because they wouldn't be
Correct. No,
correct yet
understood,
enrolled.
But if we find out later,
That would be
that
something
they-
that we can look at,
that
yep.
can be
Typically,
waived.
if we find out afterwards, fees are waived or then returned to
yeah.
families.
Okay.
And so that would be something that we could look at for this.
How many students is this going to affect, and how many roughly?
So on average, we've had approximately 30 students screened over the course of the summer. You know, this with, you know, since there is a fee, I think maybe families who might be on the edge, it may deter them from doing that screener, but until we get through a year of it, we wouldn't really have that data to support it. But typically, right now, there is no cost for it, so we do see a higher number than surrounding districts for those who can apply.
I'm sorry, could you talk a lot louder?
I was gonna say,
into the microphones.
I know.
oh, sorry, this is not loud.
The microphones actually don't project, they're
In
just
here.
for the people
Right,
at home.
exactly. We can't actually hear you down here.
All right.
Sorry.
I do apologize. I am coming down with something, but, so tonight we're proposing, we had asked the board, we're proposing a $200 fee for families that are looking to have early entrance to kindergarten for their students. Back in October, Dr. Mumm presented some changes, some updates to what that process actually looks like. And so it is much more comprehensive. It contains an additional screener. We also did some work to see what surrounding districts were doing. And it was about 50-50 for those that had a fee and those that didn't. Those ranged anywhere from, I believe, $50 up to like $500. And so, you know, we're looking to essentially cover the cost of the materials for that testing. We're not looking to make money off of this. And so that's why we went with that $200 fee. Board member Mankivsky asked if we found out if someone was, you know, later on, was approved under free and reduced, what would happen with those fees. And just like our other fees, we would revisit that. And typically those fees then are returned to that family if they qualify under that. Better.
Questions, comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approves the early kindergarten entrance fee of $200 to support the administrative assessment costs for the 2025-2026 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. McCauley?
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons?
Aye.
Dr. Lawler?
Aye.
Mr. Cook?
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. The early kindergarten early entrance procedures and fees is approved. The third item of new business is a presentation of the Kaneland referendum communications update. Dr. Rowling.
I want to hand this one off to Mr. Chavez, who's going to review our communications plan going into the referendum. I want to point out that this will continue to evolve. In fact, I believe this morning I got another invite for another opportunity, so we will continue to add events and public visits, and we'll continue to keep the board apprised of that.
All right, good evening, board members. I will be presenting the communications plan. I just want to say thanks to everybody that's contributed, including our referendum team. Some great vision and direction from Dr. Rowling. Also, Jen Hodak, our communications coordinator, has also contributed heavily to a lot of the technical side of things and a lot of the graphics. Also, I've taken the time to meet with some directors of communications from around the suburbs of Chicago who recently had successful referendums. They were gracious enough to go through their plans with me, go through our plan, and do a comparison and really just make sure that we're on the right track. So I feel strongly that this is a great plan based on that, and the timing is right as well. So we started off really with some goals of just making sure that the community is fully aware of everything going on with the referendum, the amount we're going for, the projects, also the tax impact. This kind of started a little ways back in terms of just feedback gathering. Why did everybody vote no the first time around, and what things could we do to improve and make this plan better. So right now, we are just continuing to work on that, make sure that we effectively communicate everything I just mentioned to the community, and we'll continue to do that. And I'll go into kind of a high overview of things, and as we go further into the presentation, I'll get into more details. There'll be some time at the end for questions, but feel free to jump in with any questions that you have. So I'll start off with the schedules and deadlines. So basically, everybody knows in here, at least hopefully, the April 1st is a key date for us. That's going to be the election day. So what I've done is built kind of a schedule and deadlines, a timeline essentially. So this allows me to really make sure that all the campaigns that will be running for the referendum are put out in a timely manner. Make sure that we're keeping on schedule, make sure that all the content is getting out on certain days. And again, I'm going to go through a lot of these campaigns in more detail here shortly. But this is just for tracking purposes, basically. I want to make sure that everything is being tracked, how many times information has been dispersed, where it's been dispersed, and just keep everything on track and on schedule to make sure that we hit our goals. So some of the marketing channels that we've been utilizing are going to be our website. We have a referendum website going that, as I mentioned, has been designed by our communications coordinator. She does a great job of keeping that up to date, and we essentially are looking to update the website really weekly. The website's going to house all the information that we have ever put out for the referendum, but also some of those more detailed pieces of information that a lot of the community members are going to want to see, more of a breakdown of the projects, some of the costs associated with that. So really the website's a great place to view all the information, but also really those kind of detailed pieces as well to kind of get into the more details of those projects and the taxes and how all that breaks down. The newsletter, that started this year, the nightly news, weekly newsletter. So that has a ton of information in it, all kinds of events and great things going on around the school district. But one of the key points for the newsletter is there is a referendum section. So every week that gets updated with some additional information, whether that be a new video that we've put out, a new social media graphic, town halls, essentially all the information with a link to our website gets put into that newsletter each week so that everybody can kind of follow along and stay up to date. Social media, we'll be running a couple different social media campaigns related to the referendum. I'll get into a little more details into that in a few more slides and actually show some examples of those social media campaigns. We'll also get into a little bit of social media advertising as well and kind of how that works, but I'll save that for a few more slides. News outlets. I've been partnering with a lot of our local reporters and news organizations in the area to make sure that we're consistently putting out press releases and making sure that I collaborate with those reporters, get them all the information that they need, and really just keeping those strong ties between the media relations between Kaneland and the local reporters to get the news information out there. And I think it's great to build those relationships just for the school district in general, just for other future accomplishments or new stories that we'll want to get out there as well. Advertising, we'll definitely do a focus on social media advertising. That's going to allow us to really get our message in front of community members who don't necessarily follow our social media accounts. So we're going to be running a strong advertising campaign about 6 to 8 weeks out to the April 1st date, just to make sure that if you're not following us, but you're in a certain area, you're in a certain demographic, that we're able to target you and get that information in front of you as well, and get those links for our website and the videos and everything like that to make sure that we're just putting the information out there and reaching those non-school community members. Town halls. We've been doing town halls since last fall. The first round of town halls was more geared towards feedback gathering, making sure that we hear the community members, we gather their feedback, we kind of see what those pain points are. So the first round of town halls in the fall was just that. We held one virtual town hall and then several in the communities such as Caneville, Maple Park, Elburn, Sugar Grove, Montgomery at McDowell. And I think those went really well overall just to gather feedback. We saw turnout about roughly 15 to 20 people or so. But in speaking to my colleagues around the area, that's about average or so. About 15 to 30 people for a town hall is what some of our fellow districts receive. And some of these other districts also have sometimes upwards of 25, 30,000 students. They also at times provide childcare and food as well, and that still will typically draw roughly 30 people to a referendum or a town hall in general. And then if you get into something that really impacts the community, maybe redistricting or something like that, you might draw in 100 or 200 or something like that. So,
Mr. Chavez, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Any of those town halls include board members, do you?
Oh, yes, I believe we had a few board members stop by and definitely engage with the community.
I meant at the other districts.
Oh, at the other districts?
Yeah, sorry.
I'd have to look into that for you, to be honest with you. I don't know at the top of my head if board members do attend those town halls or whatever they do, but that's a good question.
I was just curious to see if that maybe impacted the turnout.
Yeah, right, yeah, that's a good point. Good look into that. All right. Community events. We're kind of getting out to really any community event that's happening at the moment with winter and stuff like that. Not a whole lot going on right now. We did stop by the Alburn stroll for Christmas there. So that was a great way to interact with community members and just kind of show that we do have the referendum, kind of advertise a little bit, promote. So we'll continue to look for those opportunities, and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more as well as we talk about the targeted presentations. We've provided some presentations. For example, the Alburn Chamber of Commerce is one example where we've had a presentation. Dr. Rolwing mentioned one. Sugar Grove, Kiwanis as well will be another presentation coming up soon. So really, I'm going to continue to look for those opportunities and definitely make sure that we get into the chambers of commerce and for all the different communities. Look for those opportunities for any kind of senior meetings, those type of things. So I've been reaching out to various directors of communications in the area and also our villages to identify those opportunities so we can speak about the referendum. Tours. We are planning some tours for the high school. A while back, I did a tour video, which really just highlighted all the locations around the district that we're looking to improve, all the needs of the district. So I think that's a great opportunity for those who can't make it to a tour at the high school to see what those needs are. But we will be scheduling and promoting those tours. The scheduling is already underway. Promotion will be coming soon to ensure that everybody is aware that they will have the opportunity to stop by the high school and see what those needs are. Thought Exchange. So Thought Exchange is a newer program that the district is utilizing. It's a great program. I think it's basically to gather feedback. You can do surveys, but some of the key points to it are that you're able to rate the thoughts of others and remain completely and also remain private. And by doing that, you're able to kind of see what people's thoughts are. People are able to engage with each other, leave comments on those thoughts, you're able to rate them and things like that. So I think that'll be a good opportunity for us to be able to get some real data-driven information and also be able to see what the misinformation is and really be able to provide the accurate information as we get closer to that voting date.
So, real quick, some of the feedback I've heard from community members and myself as well is we're going out, we're asking for this big referendum, and if you read like a news article, they'll say, well, we tried this lower amount a couple years ago, now we're asking for more. And we're not saying directly, first of all, this will have no impact on your tax bill, right? Limited to no impact on your tax bill. Your tax bill won't go up.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side of that is this money's got to come from somewhere. Money's just not free. And so, maybe first of all, highlighting the fact that it won't have an impact, but also, and I always ask you guys to talk to me like I'm a first grader, nothing against first graders, but simplify it to where it's easy to understand that we're basically restructuring and prolonging the debt, so they understand that you're still paying. It's just we're just structuring it in a certain way. But also, I think one of the things to highlight is that this is a relatively new concept based on legislation, right? So there are reasons why we couldn't do this previously, but now we have the ability. I think just getting people to understand the logistics of how we're doing this and why we're doing it, from a pure my pocketbook paying perspective.
Sure, and Mr. Chavez is going to do, I think, Dr. Bogan's already
We're already-
been interviewed for
Yeah.
at least one video. So we are trying to put out, using our subject matter experts. Mr. Payton has done a couple of short form videos. Dr. Bogan's done the interview at least already. And I think as we move through this, we can definitely include some of that in our news, when we do a press release. I know that we were able to get traction on one press release through I believe it was Kane County Chronicle, that did address some of those initial bond things, but we can continue to push on that for sure.
It'd be appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll get into a few of those slides here shortly as well, and I think that will be absolutely important to continue to make the community aware of how that's happening, the breakdown and explanation of those, and I think as we partner more with PMA as well to get more facts and details, we'll kind of keep trickling that information out. The goal is to make everything very clear and simplistic and straightforward. So
I just want transparency to be
Yeah.
key, because we're working hard to build back this trust from the community. And I think it starts with transparency at every level, so,
Great point. So yeah, that'll certainly be the goal as we continue on. So yeah, the next thing we have is school events. We did this last time around as well, but just setting up a table at various school events, whether that be a registration, a concert of some sort, and that way, again, we're getting out there, we're there to engage with the community, answer any questions that they have, and also promote the referendum and the information related to that as well. So we'll be getting out there as a team in the next few months to make sure that we do that as well. Staff meetings, those are currently underway to be scheduled. Again, going back to the fall, we did staff meetings with every school. That was to gather information, gather feedback that we could utilize to bring a final plan. This time around, we'll be going back around to voluntary staff meetings to make sure that we can then present that plan, talk through it a little bit, and get additional feedback. So those are currently under the way for getting those scheduled. Citizens group. We'll also be looking into organize a citizens group that will go out there and spread information about the referendum. So more information to come on that. That's in the works right now, so not too many details, but that will be happening very quickly. Infinite Campus is another tool that we have. This is our email messaging system that we typically use for very important messages, also our emergency messages, a school closure, something like that. This goes out to every single parent in the district that basically they have an Infinite Campus email address stored in there. So we try to use this sparingly as it is for important messages, the referendum being very important. So we kind of use this here and there to kind of get out some information about the town halls or something that's very important that's coming up that our families really need to know about. Mailer. I'll show you an example of a mailer that we are looking to send out to every household in the community. So we are working with a printing company that will be able to identify all the households in our district and get this mailer out so that we can make sure that everybody in the community that is able to get some information about this. If they haven't seen it, they haven't seen any of our advertisements, they haven't followed our socials, they are going to get a mailer in their mailbox, so we can make sure they're aware of the website, the voting date, and it really has just a ton of great information for them in a very small space. Excuse me. Yard signs. That'll come kind of a little closer to the referendum voting date, but again, the kind of 6 to 8 weeks out leading up to that, yard signs is another way that we'll be able to get information out to the community about the referendum, again, for those who maybe aren't tapped into our social medias or our websites. So this is just a bit more detail on the marketing mix. The short videos, as Dr. Rolwing mentioned, those will be put out weekly. Been working with Mark Payton on just doing something called Facility Fridays. So that's a video series that I put out there that essentially will highlight some aspect of our facilities in a brief 2 to 3 minute video with a subject matter expert explaining and going through that. The first week was a video about boilers. So our Director of Buildings and Grounds was able to talk through that a little bit, show everybody the boilers, as that's been a hot topic. And it's just a way to really get into the school and see exactly the type of things that we would like to work on pending a successful referendum. So again, that'll be weekly, every Friday. Town halls, talked about that a little bit already, but I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in another slide. A website, we've talked about that. Newsletter and thought exchange. So basically just kind of getting back to the frequency of this. We're trying to keep this up to date and keep pushing out this information weekly or bi-weekly, just depending on what the need is. All right, so I know one of the big topics was kind of reaching those community members without school-age children. So just to touch on a few items on how we've tried to do that. Social media advertising, as I mentioned, is on the way. Town halls, the website, the newsletter. The newsletter is available on our social media account, and recently I've also added a subscription option. So those community members who aren't part of our Infinite Campus system that I mentioned earlier can now sign up to receive the nightly news in their email inbox every week. So I think that's a great opportunity as well to reach those non-school community members and make sure that they're still receiving information from us about Kaneland. In terms of the community organization, you know, we're kind of looking at potential door-to-door there, mailers, yard signs, those type of things that, again, we can kind of reach all of our community members. The press releases, as Dr. Rolwing mentioned, have been successful, and I'll go ahead and show you guys in a slide here in just a moment how many stories we've generated from those press releases. Those community events that we'll continue to identify, such as the Chamber of Commerce meetings and other presentations or other meetings that they'll have. And at those events, we'll do a targeted presentation about what the needs are for Kaneland School District and how we plan to address those needs.
Mr. Chavez, are those targeted presentations specifically for community members without schools children, or is that the same presentation?
It's the same presentation. So basically what we're doing is just giving everybody an overview of what the needs are in the district. We're kind of going through what those projects are and showing that each school essentially is getting some sort of project done to improve. But yeah, the presentation itself isn't really targeted at that.
Okay, I would just recommend that to show the benefits to the people without school-age children, what that could be in those presentations.
Yeah,
That makes sense. Good.
usually as we speak, you know, if you've ever seen me speak, I don't follow script very well. So I tend to adjust for the audience, and then it usually generates different questions too. We are looking to, you know, get in front of people without students in the system through a lot of these, we talked about the Kiwanis, I'm trying to get in front of, if anyone's got ideas, send them to me, I'm happy to go to anywhere. Just getting in front of those groups and trying to spread word that way too.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a whole wide range of referendum topics that we're putting information out about. I mentioned the facilities with the Facility Friday video, the debt restructuring information, the tax impact, physical education, individual projects that we're focusing on to break everything down and, you know, try to put it into kind of small pieces that are more easily readable and those type of things, so that way you're just kind of not getting a bunch of information, a bunch of stuff thrown at you all at once. Also the education impacts and the community benefits, but just a whole lot more in terms of topics that we'll be putting out information on. So this is the website. Basically what we have here is a banner at the top that slides with some of the kind of highlights that we're looking to push forward. The town hall meetings I mentioned, presentations with very detailed information related to the financials, the projects, and those type of things are on there. As I mentioned, all of our social media content is on there as well, kind of in one place for everybody to look at versus kind of having to wait to see it weekly and those type of things as it comes out. But it really just houses all the information that we put out so far. There's also a section for community members to sign up to receive information from us about the referendum. So this is one of the social media campaigns. It's called Anticipated Benefits. So every week, you'll essentially on our social media see a image like this, which highlights some students from Kaneland. It'll show the date of the referendum. It'll show a tagline there in regards to building a bright future together, investing in our students, our community, and our tomorrow. And then from there, it talks about an important key point. One being there will be no bond and interest tax rate increase due to debt restructuring. Another key point, we're enhancing physical education and athletic facilities to promote team success, safeguard athletes, and enrich physical education opportunities. So there's a lot more of these. This is just an example of this particular campaign anticipated benefits.
Well, this might be too big of an ask, and that's okay. Tell me it's too big of an ask, okay? But it would be interesting for me to see, is there any data out there that shows the improvement of facilities like we're planning to do that has an impact on student achievement and student growth? Right?
Yeah, we're actually working on some of those things
Are you?
right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
You know, I'll tell you, when you start looking at research, you'll find something that better, you know.
Well,
you
just
know,
show us the
right?
good stuff.
Yeah,
Don't just
right.
tell us.
Improved HVAC, you know, improved scores, and then you'll find somebody that counteracts that. But a lot of the things that we are talking about, there is some data out there suggesting how it impacts student learning, student experience.
All right, another social media campaign that we'll be putting out there weekly is going to be a Have You Heard series. So again, just kind of making sure that we're getting the key points out there about the referendum. This post has information about our website, the date to vote, and also just information to make sure that we're making it clear that there will be no tax bond and interest tax rate increase, what the benefits are of a field house, and so on and so forth. And then the last social media series that we'll be putting out is going to be just quotes from our administrators. So along the way, Dr. Rolwing has been quoted a few times at some of his presentations. So pulling some quotes from there, also in meeting with Jackie and also interviewing her as well. So this will just be a continuing series of administrators with quotes related to the referendum. So informational videos, talked about that. Those are being housed at our website. They're also on YouTube. On our YouTube channel, we've created a playlist that's it's gonna make it easy to find all the referendum videos that have been put out so far. I mentioned the boilers, the tour of the high school, a recent talk with the superintendents as well. And this is just gonna keep building and growing, and the videos will be added each week to this playlist. Just want to talk about some social media analytics so we can just kind of point out how many views we're getting and just kind of take a look at that. And again, this is prior to any advertising or using any kind of Meta, Facebook, or Instagram advertising, so this is all organic at this point. You're looking at really the last 90 days. I mean, I can kind of pull stats from whenever, last month, last 90 days, last year. I thought last 90 days would be a good place to start. So as we're seeing on there, on our YouTube channel last 90 days, we got about 2,900 views, about 803 hours of watch time, and we grew by 27 subscribers. So that's pretty solid there. For Facebook, we hit some pretty good numbers in terms of views, reach. It's, high in the thousands there. Content interactions, as you can see, the stats are looking good. We have about 3.6 thousand followers on Facebook. So I expect these numbers to ramp way up as soon as we implement the advertising.
Mr. Chavez, is this the Kaneland as a whole, or is this like a separate referendum, YouTube and Facebook?
This is our Kaneland District social media accounts.
Okay.
Yep. So this is what we use for everything in terms of all of our events, all of our promotion.
Just the actual district one.
Okay.
There are literally dozens of, departments, schools. This is just the Kaneland 302.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
So just our district. So on X, we have about 1,600 followers, and in the last 7 days, we had about 1.6 thousand impressions on our posts. So roughly about 1.6 thousand views, essentially, interactions, those type of things. Instagram, in the last 90 days, about 15,000 views, 3.8 thousand in our reach, 571 content interactions, and we're growing that as well. Slowly but surely, we've got about 270 followers there. And then the next would be the town halls. These are the town halls I've been mentioning this time around, going out and promoting the actual finalized plan. I want to call out a date change there that we had for Sugar Grove due to a scheduling conflict, so that is now March 6th. I'd like to point that out. All this information is on our website, social medias. We also have 2 virtual town halls this time. one on February 4th, and then one towards the end on March 24th. So we can make sure that we're getting all the information out to the community all the way to the very end. As you can see, they're in various communities around the district, including Caneville, Maple Park, Montgomery, Sugar Grove, and Elgin.
So with the town halls, I'd encourage us all to attend, to your point earlier. It doesn't hurt to be there. First of all, just being listening ears and hearing what the community has to say, but engaging with the community, because we're asking for their feedback. So,
Do we need to coordinate that though?
yeah, I guess that's what I'm wondering. Would we coordinate that with you, or do you want to know ahead of time, or just show up?
Let me check on if that would impact Open Meetings Act. And then I'll ensure what the rule is, and then I can put that in this week's update.
Sure.
I should really make the Monday in Montgomery. It's across 3 miles.
All right, I'll see you there.
All right, we've touched on the targeted presentations. Just again, continuing to look for those opportunities within the communities to speak at various meetings, whether that be a town hall, a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and so on. Here's the sample mailer. This is a work in progress, but as you can see, this is actually just one page of it. It'll be double-sided to make sure we get all the information that we can. It'll have a question on the top left corner to make that very clear. It'll talk about without the tax rate increase and get into more details about that. It'll get into all the benefits and all the schools that are impacted. So again, this is just a sample, not a complete project yet, still underway. And again, I'd like to thank Jen Hodak for her work on this. It's quite a bit of information there.
The
And this is-
distribution list, is it going to be every home in the district, or where you get, how are you
Yes, that would
distributing?
be, so yes, we are working with a printing company that's what they specialize in, so they're gonna be able to identify every mailbox essentially in the Kaneland School District, in the area, all our communities, and we'll be able to get that into each mailbox. All right, this is just a couple of the press releases that we've sent out recently. One was the referendum with no bond and interest tax rate increase. Another one was when the board had voted essentially on the 140 million. So these are just examples of that. And then the next slide shows what it's led to. Most recently, we had a story in the Kane County Chronicle. I worked with the reporters on that to answer all the questions that they had and make sure that we got the story done. And here's a list on this side of about 7 to 8 stories that we've recently gotten into the news, whether that be the Chicago Tribune, Shaw Local, Daily Herald, and so on and so forth. So again, those press releases, I will continue sending those out. I will continue working with the media to make sure that these stories do get into the news, and that again, our community is aware of what's going on. All right, any other further questions? Concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Chavez.
All right, you're welcome.
Okay, there's no action necessary tonight for the referendum update. The fourth item of new business is a presentation, oh, thank you as well, Dr. Rowling. Sorry. The fourth item of new business is a presentation on the curriculum series, literacy. Dr. Rowling.
I'm going to turn this one over to Doctors Mum and Horn.
Good evening. So we are here for our second installment of curriculum practices. So if you recall, last month we went over curriculum practices in the district in general terms. Tonight we are going to be focusing on a specific content area, English language arts, or referred to as ELA. So we're going to be following the same format that we did previously. We're going to be going through the what of the curriculum by comparison. We're going to be looking at curriculum tools, curriculum decision making, as well as the curriculum design, all of that encompassing what we are referring to as curriculum practices. Okay. So what I have for you is looking at IRA data. That is data that is taken 3rd grade through 8th grade, and we have Kaneland compared to some of our surrounding schools. And what you can see at first glance at that is that we are performing below state average, as well as below many of our surrounding schools. Some of our schools more so than others. One point that we do want to bring out is that while that is true and it's something that we do not want to see, we are working to change that. We have seen some improvement. This past year, for example, we had a 7.7% growth as a district, going from 31.9% to 39.6% as meeting state expectations. And when you take a look at what is happening, not just in the growth, but the gap between Kaneland's performance and the state average, you'll see if you go back 3 years in time, 2022, there was a 3.3 gap between where Kaneland was and where the state average is, compared to after this past year, we did narrow that growth by 1.6%. Obviously, that's just 1 point of comparison. The goal is to be above state average. The goal is not to be underperforming compared to our surrounding districts. And what we are seeing in the data is positive movement towards that at the 3rd through 8th grade level.
And some of the things that we've identified through looking at both state data and local data are really the need for that common sequence as well as the crosswalks that help take the reported standards and link them to the tools that they have. And so you'll see the tools that we have and the sequence that are in, we put some of the sample sequences that we've already started on the last slide at some of the grade spans, so you can see the work that's already been started this year, trying to really build the ability to look at the IAR data, look at the Common Core standard, the state standard that was the biggest deficit within that gap, and then be able to go to that crosswalk and say which lessons give us the ability to explicitly teach to that standard. And so those crosswalks that are developed through the course of this year will really give the capability to explicitly teach in our biggest gap areas. And so that will really bring the tools that we have into a better sequence and alignment for all of the staff based on that data analysis. So looking at some of our local assessment, Rigby is a reading running record that looks both at fluency as well as the ability to do comprehension questions. This is trimester 1, which ends in November. Trimester 2, we can send that data in a weekly update. It ends at the end of February. You look for probably about, ideally 70-75% you want in trimester 1 to be able at or above grade level in order to hit your end of the year benchmark of your 80-85% meeting or exceeding at the end of the year. And so typically kindergarten is our outlier in your first trimester because they really haven't got into the shift of just word calling and getting into that full reading process. In fact, they just got their running records done right prior to trimester 1. And so the kindergarten is kind of a little bit of anomaly in trimester 1 data. Trimester 2 would be more accurate to look at for kindergarten. This data is used to look at and qualify for MTSS support, looking at where are our population of students that we need to intervene and look for more support, where are grade levels that we might want to look for more professional development as well. And so that is our first trimester 1 Rigby data. And then we also look at our winter diagnostic, which is the second of 3 iReady. And this is the end of the year comparison. What % of students are at the % of on or at the end of the year grade level composite ready to meet that end of the grade levels view within the iReady assessment. And you can see on the side, just to kind of draw your attention to what grades took it. We do iReady 2nd through 8th grade. Some do administer it to 1st grade, so that's why you see a difference between the schools. And then Harder is just taking their iReady window right now. The window for iReady spans about 8 weeks. And so some schools take it a little bit earlier and some take it a little bit later. Harder's data on here is actually the first window, the fall window. And so after their window closes here, we can send the winter iReady data to you in the board update as well. But it's the end of the year data on that one. So a couple of things that kind of is the what piece of it. The how piece is the curriculum tools. and which ones are the teachers, the teacher books that really provide the explicit lessons for teaching, and then which ones are student materials. And so we tried to outline when were they last adopted, what are the teacher books where the lessons are really kept, and then which ones are pieces that students would engage with. And so the first two slides are focusing on the writing and word study. The writing pieces of it are, the emphasis tool is the units of study kits. Those are the teacher pieces. There are trade books that go with it to model author's voice, to model when writing pieces are put together into a published version, what do those trade books tell us? And those trade books are in all of the genres. We really wanted to take a process of having a balanced approach of science of reading with kind of that whole language experience. And so we also have the patterns of power with the phonemic awareness within word study, because we want to blend both the guided reading portion, the guided writing, with that science of reading and phonics explicit instruction. And so that's when we also adopted in 2022 Foundations and Jolly Phonics and the Fontes and Pinnell word study. Jolly Phonics is what we start in kindergarten, and then they transition into Foundations at that mid-kindergarten, into first, somewhat into second, and then into Foundations for when they are showing proficiency. They start Foundations in possibly first grade into second, a little bit into third, and then they can go into word journeys, depending where they're showing proficiency within their phonics instruction. And then you can move on and see where we do have units of study in 3-5, and again adopted in 18-19 with the trade books as well, same with patterns of power. We did add in Up the Ladder writing kit. That was another piece within the writing component that we added a little bit later. I think it was in 2021 as a needed piece. It just added a little bit more explicit lesson options for the higher level writer. That was a piece that came later after the initial adoption, and that was through some grant funded money that we had. That's why it was outside of the adoption process. And then, as I said, we have the word study lesson cards with their Words Their Way kit for more of that word study explicit instruction. Then on to the reading. Our last adoption was in fall of 2021. It did get a little bit chopped up by our COVID experience a little bit. We started the review. There was some COVID time in there, and then the full adoption with the materials here came in 2021. It is the Fontes and Pinnell guided reading system. It has components such as the mini lesson book, the interactive read aloud. That is an experience where you have the book and you have the lesson cards that have the explicit questions that you're asking for comprehension, discussion, dialogue. Shared reading is also a part of that. All of this also, on the very last slide that you have, there is a link to a parent resource guide, which is also found on our website. And it has all of these listed by whether it's per teacher or shared among the grade level team. So you can see, are these materials per educator or shared materials as well, if you're curious to how many of these are within our classrooms. And I think I missed something on that one. There's also the mini lessons book for both K2 and 3-5. And then we have not only just Fontes and Pinnell, but we also provided the Reading Strategies book by Jenny Zaverio, which is a full teacher book with any lesson in all of the elements of reading comprehension, and explicit fluency in reading, just about any content. A lot of teachers' guides, a lot of teachers' lessons, but again, like I mentioned earlier, the key piece that we are really working hard on is, I've got a lot of lessons, but how do I crosswalk them all to our reported standards and our proficiency tables? And that's where those crosswalks will be essential for us this spring, to say, here's the reported standard, here are where you can find all of those pieces within the core resources that you have.
So a quick question. So as we go through this, and I'm not from education, so you have to forgive my ignorance, for lack of a better term, but it seems like we have all these resources that are available. We're listing off all the resources, but structure to where we're aligned across the district, at least at the elementary level, because we have 4 different elementary schools, so that these teachers can utilize these resources, you know, together to, because they're all going to end up in the same middle school and high school, and also to help for me, and again, I'm not in education, but like to have all these resources feels like it'd be overwhelming without like a given structure to help guide us as, especially for newer teachers, you know, and to make sure we're aligned as a district.
That's where I think the crosswalks will help considerably. The thing that it has is the scope. The sequences is where I think that crosswalk will help us to kind of focus on the when of to teach that. Some of it is definitely guided by the student experience. As I see a student do A, then I know B has got to come next. And that's maybe different for me versus different for James, because we're 2 totally different readers. And so there is a little nuance of, you know, the sequence is guided a little bit by the reader, but at the same time, we need to have some common experience. Even though our sequence might be slightly different, we do need to have some anchor sequence lessons that we're both exposed to. And that is part of our crosswalk that we're working on this spring, of what are those anchor lessons that everyone needs to have, every student needs to have that exposure to build that commonality in experience for our students, because I do think that is what's lacking. Yep.
Thank you.
And in that crosswalk, it'll take the reported standard, tell where to find the resources, and highlight that sequence, that common sequence that every student should experience. Yep. And then the literacy closets have been something that I think we started to build 2 adoptions ago. And so they really started back in about 2005. I was trying to find our first purchase order for them, and I got back to about 2005 was the earliest one. Beyond Fontes and Pinnell books, I wanted to make sure that we had literature that came from a variety of vendors and a variety of different types. In some of our data, you can see one of our biggest areas of growth is nonfiction text. And so the literacy closet is one that has a wide variety of different types of books, different types of vendors. It is used a lot sometimes, and then it's used a little in other, you know, there's some books in there that I know I've talked with a lot of staff of, sometimes we probably need to purge some of them because they're either getting older or they haven't been used as much, or we need to re-look at some of the titles. And so the literacy closet is leveled readers that go all the way from A, which is typically our first reader in kindergarten, all the way up to level U, and we have some TUV higher level reading into 5th grade, 6th grade, but by then they kind of get into more their interest and a lot of novels. And so it is available for staff to use for guided reading purposes in small groups. They do come in sets of 6 or 8, and so it's not like you can go to the literacy closet and check something out for your whole class to read. It would be for the intention of doing a small guided reading group around a group of 6 or 8 students. Most of them do come with the ability to have some comprehension questions, but some just come with the books. And the teachers have to kind of think about what types of questions would I ask as we go through and read these. And so they are not as nicely laid out as something like the Fontes and Pinnell with the comprehension cards right with the text. Some have them, some don't. But they are options for other ways and other books and other authors to have some class exposure to our leveled readers.
Okay, shifting to the secondary level, beginning in the 6th grade and moving up through 12th grade, the focus is more on reading to learn and less on learning to read, but you certainly see K through 12 and starting to tailor off. So what that means is rather than looking at materials and trade books, you're looking at authentic pieces of works for students to read. So at the 6th grade level, you'll see the content built around standards, standards requiring students to read closely, to cite evidence, to read for information, read to determine argumentation, or read to understand the narrative of what's talking about, of what the author's intending. So what how it is set up, it's around units of study. So there's typically a central novel or larger piece So for an example, at the mid-level, in a 7th grade class, you would be reading a novel such as The Giver and focusing on dystopia within the world and future kind of downfalls of civilization. And then what teachers will do is bring in other texts, graphic novels, other short stories to help enhance that. Having students read closely, engage in discussion around that, and then the writing portion of that is directly tied to it. So they're not just having argumentative discussions within the classroom based on the evidence that they're seeing in the reading that they're doing. They're actually using this in their writing, and the skill that is taught is directly tied to the type of reading that is done. Now that's introduced at the very young level, and it's perfected through, honestly, it's perfected through college, because that's what they're working on in the English 101, 200 level classes that they're working through. When we talk about data at the high school, it is different than when we talk 3-5. There's not an IAR that happens on a yearly basis. What's reported to the state is through the SAT, that is a test that's taken their junior year. That's what state's reported. So what we have up here is the ELA portion of meeting or exceeding on the SAT for the last 3 years, similar to what we did for grades 3 through 8 with IAR. We have compared ourselves to the surrounding districts, and what you can see is this is cohort to cohort. So every time you take a snapshot of it, those juniors move on to their senior year, and there's not a similar test that's taken their senior year. But it does show a snapshot of how the students are performing. And what you'll see on there is that we have dipped this past year. We are below state average, which is not something that we're proud of, and is something we are working to adjust. On here you see the data is split. 4 districts above state average, 4 below. Obviously we want to work our way to get above that. Some things I need the board to be aware of when you hear future presentations from me, not going to be referring to the SAT, because the state of Illinois has changed the contract and we are going to the ACT. So there's going to be a shift there. The goal, of course, is to give the best learning opportunity for our students so they have the best learning outcome. With the ACT in English in particular, the English department has already started working with us, not just at the junior level, but at the sophomore level, knowing that those sophomores are going to go up and take that the next year, and that our juniors this year will be taking the ACT. So an example of this would be cold reads on ACT style reading, and it's evidence-based reading. So reading for information, looking for facts, similar to what you would see on the ACT tied into content that they are teaching. So the first time they're sitting in front of that test, that's not the first time that they've been exposed to it. So it's going to be an ongoing work that we're doing, but as far as how the cut rates cut scores are presented, we're not really sure on how that's going to be just yet. We do know that the SAT meet or exceeds as defined by the state of Illinois is higher than the College Board's meet or exceeds, which is a nationwide organization. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's neither here nor there. I want our students to do the best they can on whatever assessment's in front of them. Many schools have gone to not requiring the assessment. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the term right now. Not requiring on this the state assessment. Not all of them, but the state assessments do come into play when you're looking at merit-based scholarships and other scholarships, and also placement. So the SAT will be used as a determination for many of our schools, colleges, if you're going to be placed in a remedial or non-remedial class. So it still does come into play there, and it's something we're communicating to our students to make sure that they're aware of the importance of it.
Dr. Horn, do you have stratified data on this SAT to see if this trend downwards is if it's the top quartile scoring lower, the lower quartile scoring lower, and how you address that in the curriculum?
So if it's the exceeds going down or the meets?
Well, either way, maybe the bottom quartile is just doing just as fine as they were, but the higher quartile is doing lower, and then you need to address that versus other things. Do you have like specific parts of the student body that you see
So yes,
and know
you
that needs
can drill
addressed?
down that specific. So what we get from the College Board is when you look at the state report card, you'll get a broad brushstroke of how the students are doing. We actually have the individual reports that we can sort. So yes, we are able to do that. And that's a tool that we can work with our teachers and have that information available for them. So we can look and see specifically what groups of students are doing really well. And with the SAT suite, we have the PSAT 9 and 10 that gives us some predictability in how students are doing, so we can do some intervention around that. Now, with that said, we are in a transition year, so next going into the ACT, it is going to be a little bit different. But the ACT is set up the same way, where students are going to be taking a 9th and 10th grade, and the Woods report is going to be done during their junior year.
I just like to make sure we're addressing places that are decreasing and not just broad bit.
Correct. I get that. Great question. Okay. All right. Second data point that we look at when we're talking about ELA that we have is our AP. So AP is scored on a 5-point scale. 3 or higher tend to give college credit, meaning that if you score that it can be accepted for college. There's a variety of different schools of thoughts on it. It really is institution dependent. 3 is that bottom line. Some schools require 4, some require 5. Some require that you take AP just to get in, but they will not accept the score. So it's just a reflection, a data point to look at. There are 2 AP offerings that we have at the high school. And those, when you look at surrounding schools or even nationwide, these are the two classes that high school students take. It's AP Language and Composition, that's a junior level class, or AP Literature and Comp, that's a senior level class. And what I've provided for the board are percentage of students scoring a 3 or higher. Now, typically speaking, what you'll see is a student who is in the senior level AP Literature class has also taken the AP Lang and Comp. So when you're looking at it, it really just kind of depends on how students are doing. You see lower percentages of students scoring at a 3 or higher when you're looking at the Lang and Comp. But that's also the first time they've been exposed to a college level class in ELA. And many of those students go on to take the literature and composition as well. And then while this is not provided on the school report card, we're able to actually pull this from the College Board. They do not give us access to schools, so we can't see how other students are doing, but we can see state averages. And you can see that in the language and composition that we are consistently performing at a 0.2% higher percentage higher mean score than the state average. And then within our literature and composition, we are performing about a 0.5 score. So while 0.5 or 0.2 sounds like low numbers, keep in mind we're on a 5-point scale. So 0.5, that's half a grade, half a score. So, and it does get fairly impressive when you go into the literature and composition. You see 100%, 95%. When you're dealing with a smaller sample pool, that 95%, that's one student, not scoring the 3 or higher, which happens for a variety of reasons.
Dr. Horn, off the top of your head, do you know how many, roughly about how many kids are in each of these programs?
In the programs? So the, off the top of my head, the language and comp has 3 sections running. Okay. The literature and comp has 2 sections running. Okay. And I really hope I'm not inverting that. It's one or the other, right? Okay. But I do have the numbers directly in front of me. So last year for the language and composition, we had 29 students take the exam, and for the literature and composition, we had 24 students take the exam. So when you think about literature and comp, 2 sections of it, 24, that's two sections of class, and then language and comp, that's just over that's 1 section with 24, and with the language and comp with 29, that's just slightly above 1 section of students taking it. And students choose and not choose to take the exam for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, And then moving on to the how in the curriculum, very similar to what I said about 6 through 8 ELA. English classes are set up around an anchor text that they read for information. They read to develop a persuasive argument. They read to understand the narrative. They read to do the deep read of it and analyze the character, analyze the plot. Teachers are bringing outside sources to provide information and provide context. So if they're reading Julius Caesar, they're looking at things that are happening during Shakespearean time, so they can have a better read of that as well as historical parts of it. They get the close read of it and then go on for the writing portion of it, which is most of the assessment done at the 9-12 level when you're talking about ELA, and they're working with students directly on their writing and how they're providing information, citing sources to get them ready for the type of writing that they're going to be doing in a post-secondary setting.
So the who part of decision making, we wanted to go back and look at who took part in kind of that formal curriculum review. While the curriculum review might last that year or two while you look at the written part of it and then the adoption of new materials, you have subgroups that go back and often look at any tweaks to written work or professional development that's needed. On the initial formal curriculum review, you can kind of see the participants, whether it was instructional coach, administrators, at the time, RTI staff that switched then to MTSS staff, and then the numbers of staff that participated in each one of those reviews looking back.
Okay, and looking at the curriculum review at the 6-12 level looks very similar. Partner with instructional coaches, classroom teachers. It is a little bit different at the high school to the department chairs, bringing the department chair when appropriate in to have that view of the curriculum that is in the tools that are being selected for the department as we move forward.
Another huge piece of the decision-making process is professional development then that happens since the adoption up to this point in the year, or up to this school year. And so what we did is look back and look for any professional development that was offered. And just like we looked at just sharing the global perspective of curriculum review cycle, we always want to make sure that we've had core material training. That's material training that happened with the external rep from the company of any adopted material. So you can see how many specific external sessions we've had with staff. Company presenters, we had 9 total presented from external, 3 staff members that went out and got trained by the companies and then came back to do internal things. And then you can see down below how many sessions did we offer. Within reading, we had 42 sessions so far since adoption. By internal presenters, 53 internal sessions in writing. And then we have professional development. That's hard to count how many sessions when they're embedded in school improvement planning, because that's often sessions embedded in 805 times faculty meetings. And so we have had lab classrooms. Lab classroom experiences are when there's a classroom that's designated that staff can go watch a writer's workshop lesson happening or a guided reading lesson happening, and then they can go debrief of what did you see, what might you take back into your classroom based on this experience. We've had guided reading classrooms for 2 years and writing lab classrooms for 3 years. And then we've provided book studies in the I always mess that one up. The Power of Patterns book, which is a grammar book that we do, and then the Becoming a Better Writer. We've had 4 book studies of that various staff have taken part in K through 8th grade in those book studies.
All right, so looking at next steps, Dr. Rowling is completing the 6-12 staff survey and voluntary virtual meetings. I know there was one just the other day.
One today.
One today, okay. So next month, the development of an 18-month curriculum revision plan, including projected curriculum review cycle based on that feedback. In February, Dr. Mum and I will be back for another presentation. During that time, we're going to be talking about math and providing an update for that. And then March through May, development of the crosswalks for writing and reading at the K-5, connecting core materials to key lessons for reported standards to guide the staff.
So I've kind of an abstract idea or comment. I think part of the next presentation or one of the follow-up ones, I would like to see not just what we're going to do, but how that is different than what we've already done. Because I'll tell you right now, when I look at these presentations, I always think, man, we're doing it, man. We're doing it. We got all the stuff we're supposed to be doing. On paper, it looks like we should be killing it. And then when we look at the test scores, we're like, where's the disconnect? Why doesn't this stuff work, right? So the old adage, right, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, that's obviously not a good plan. So I would like to see not just what we're going to do, but how that is drastically different from what we've done previously. And also, and this is just me, so I don't speak for everybody, if KEA would be willing, I would love to hear them also part of these presentations at some point.
To add to that, how did you get to the point that it's these crosswalks that are gonna make a difference?
I think that the K-5 survey, both the written survey and then the after-school summary, that was one of the key points that came out in the writing and reading portions, is we have materials, but it's kind of tell us the sequence and give us more guardrail guidance, was absolutely the summary trend that came both from the written and the after-school ones.
And that's come out in a number of just individual conversations and being around. This is viewed as one of the key missing pieces in our current structure. Is we have the standards, right? We have the PBPs. We have the materials. We don't have that clear connection between the two.
Yeah.
And that's where that crosswalk project is coming from.
So thank you. Thank you for explaining that for this one, but I mean kind of also for future, anytime we make
Yeah.
any changes, like how did you come to this? That it's not, a lot of times I think people feel like, oh, well, okay, great, you did surveys, but did you hear us? Did you this, that? I think connecting that dots for us too, to say, hey, this is what we heard. These are the changes that we're making based off of that.
And I do share I did share the survey results with K-5. The 6/12 one closes this week. So I will get that information out to our staff. I think it's important that our staff sees, here's what was said. And that's actually spurred a number of people reaching out to me to have individual conversations too, of really kind of reaffirming what was put out there and that's accurate in terms of how they feel. And so I think a lot of it is in individual conversations of, here's where I'm struggling as a teacher, this is what I need to do my job better.
That's great.
Are you seeing common themes amongst the staff when you're having these conversations?
Yeah, I would say there are definitely some common themes of, we've talked about this idea of like pure autonomy versus pure direction, right? I'm never going to advocate for this one, right? But what I'm hearing kind of across the board is we want to move a little bit in this direction, right? Providing a little more direction, while also telling some of especially our experienced teachers that have been doing this a long time, here's a suggestion. If you want to adjust some, you definitely can, right? But also creating, Dr. Mum talked about anchor activities. As we teach this one concept, we're all possibly doing this one same thing so that everybody has a shared experience, but then our more experienced teachers some of them have great ways they do this, and some struggle. Brand new teacher, it's a lot to do. So that's the common theme I'm hearing is we really need more of that connecting piece between our PVP and our materials. And the math conversation is different because we don't have a primary resource right now. We're in the process of doing that. I actually stopped into the meeting today as they're doing that. So that conversation's a little different, but in terms of reading and writing, that's definitely the theme that I hear.
Shared resources, 2, curricular resources available to all the teachers who are teaching that particular unit, correct? From the perspective certainly of reading, I don't necessarily hear that we don't have the resources. It's that we don't have that connecting piece. So how am I taking the PBP and connecting it to the resources that are there? That's generally the theme I've heard. Any feedback from the math teachers yet, or no?
The math teachers, well, at K-5, it's probably definitely at K-3, it's the same teacher, right?
Understood.
But the math, yes, the math is definitely, we need a common resource. And that is, like I said, that was the meeting I was in this morning. I've stopped in for a little while. I would anticipate we're coming to the board with a proposed curriculum package in, I would imagine, April. So we're continuing to work that process. I know we're having some vendors in on the Kane County School Improvement Day, which is the last day of February, I believe.
Yep.
So we are working that process, and I would expect we're bringing something again in April for implementation next year.
So I think another concern or question I have is that, like, I know our teachers are doing amazing things and they're teaching our kids every single day. It just seems like that's not being captured, and I don't understand, or I don't know, right? Is it just that the test is capturing things that we're not emphasizing? And if that's the case, right, like, that's another problem, right? And I hate teaching to the test, but I also want to see our test scores improve, right? So I know I'm talking on both sides of my mouth. But then on top of that, like, how do we capture what actually is being, like, the successes that we are having, right? So I want to see that too. But at the end of the day, it seems to be rippling upward, right? So whatever problems we're having at the lower level, we're certainly seeing at the higher level. And I hate teaching the test. I think it's a terrible way of teaching. But at some point, we need those SAT scores or ACT scores to be much better, right?
Yeah, so what I would say to that is that I think the test is based on the standards, right? So if
Yeah.
we're teaching to the standards, we are teaching to the test.
Okay.
But not in like a pejorative way, but that's how we should be doing that.
Okay, yeah.
Should we be preparing our kids to be successful in that environment? Yes, and that's actually in my superintendent update. I'm gonna talk about that. I think in terms of understanding where that gap is, where we are right now with this high level of autonomy, it's hard to define where that gap is because you may have a different experience depending on who your teacher is or what school you attend. So it's hard for us to look as a system at where we're missing the mark. After this work is done and we're able to kind of have a more defined scope and sequence and some more common data points with assessments, then we should be able to say, okay, we are missing the mark in comprehension, or we're missing the mark in understanding, using evidence when we're writing. Then we'll have more of that. But right now, because we have this system that is really built on, like I said, teacher autonomy, we don't have that commonality.
Okay.
And so that's the work that's being done right now, and will continue.
Okay.
One commonality that I think will help even this spring is we are doing our IAR planning calendar, where each week, each grade level is doing one past question just as discussion with their class in either ELA or math with their students. To kind of get in the mind frame of not teaching to the test, but the mind frame of what vocabulary is used on that test. How do we take the strategies that we've learned in class and apply it to this type of question? And the feedback that we can get from staff then is, how were those discussions, and what lessons and strategies did we use that fit nice into those conversations, and which problems did you do that were like, oh, our vocabulary was discrepant from the way it asked. And then I think that can give us initial insight this spring, because there's one each week that, throughout the calendar that started just last week and runs through March, that can give us, kind of the insight into the way it's asked, the way it's problem solved, even just the strategy of looking at the multiple choices, and gives a little preview of how they might be laid out on a standardized test, especially for our third graders that might not have seen a test like that before, and can give us a little assessment of what we teach and how it aligns or disaligns to how it's asked on that type of test. And so that can be immediate feedback that we get this spring.
Yeah, great.
Questions, comments? Mr. Kleisner, try not to leave you out, but I also want to put you on the spot. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for,
Thank you.
thank you, Dr. Lemon, Dr. Lemon. There's no action necessary for tonight for the presentation on curriculum literacy. It is now time for the superintendent board report. Dr. Rowland.
Yeah, got a lot of notes here today. All right, superintendent's report. As Dr. Mum just mentioned, the Ed Services Department will be hosting the Show What You Know IAR virtual parent meeting on February the 13th at 5:30. That is one of the kickoff for how we are trying to prepare our students, community, and teachers better for the success on the IAR this year. They will be reviewing information about the IAR in general and sharing ideas with parents on how they can help their students show what they know on the IAR. More information about this meeting will be communicated as it gets closer through our normal vehicles. The KEA and our CAC will be hosting a Board of Education candidate forum. The event will take place on February 20th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. in the Harder Cafeteria and will also be live streamed. And then Kaneland Hall of Fame has hosted 2 induction events in the past 2 weeks. New inductees include Lindsey Long for basketball, James Anderson, Ben Barnes, Nathan Dyer, all individuals for track, and the 2014 boys track team that earned 2nd place at state. Congratulations to those outstanding knights. And I will say the last one was really cool. Mr. Anderson was the first ever state medalist in Kaneland history. So it was really just a unique experience to have that type of experience in the room. So that's all that I have. Dr. Bowman?
Nothing for me this evening.
I was gonna say it'd be Sarah.
I was going to ask Mr. Gonzalez.
Slattery, thank you.
Good evening. I just have some highlights from last week. Last Wednesday, girls bowling had their senior night at Mardi Gras Lanes in DeKalb against Sycamore. The Knights fell to the Spartans, but senior Emma Pernice bowled a great game of 267 in her second game of 3. Boys wrestling also had their senior night against LaSalle Peru and Woodstock North on Thursday. The Knights celebrated their 11 amazing seniors that night, and a few seniors that won their matches included Wyatt Yankel, Hudson Giannini, Alex Gochez, Caden Vanek, and J.R. Warfel. On Friday, both girls and boys varsity basketball played Ottawa at home in a doubleheader. Both teams were victorious against the Pirates. And then yesterday, Sunday, Kaneland's cheer team competed at Huntley High School's annual Valentine's Day Sweetheart Cheer Competition. They placed 7th out of 17 teams in their category. It was their last competition right before sectionals. So, yeah, so they're going there next. But yeah, thank you.
Board members? Okay. We'll proceed then to topics for future agendas.
I know we talked about this last time, but where are we on the enhanced classes in the high school?
Yeah, so Dr. Horn will be bringing something at the next meeting as an update for that.
Anything else? Once, twice? Okay, we're going to move on to the second round of public comments. Please just keep in mind the parameters outlined before regarding time, and we'll proceed. First up, Joy Corbett.
So I'm kind of sad that I couldn't share this before you guys voted on KIPLA. But me and one of my friend's moms, we sent like a notebook around at our school to to every single kid, and even some adults signed it. And it just shows how much kids just wanted to keep KIPLA there. And there's just like so many people that wrote so many amazing things. Like I can't even explain all of these in my 3 minutes. But like some of them were like people feel like it's better because it's personalized and they can go higher and not be held back to that one standard. But like there's just a lot of things that kids wanted that we aren't gonna get now. Like for instance, we're not gonna have pathways. We could, but it'll be harder because then it's gonna be hard getting both schedules from Kipla and Harder together. Plus, it's gonna be like harder to have transportation, bringing all the new 5th graders from every single school, all the existing kids that are coming back, all the 7th and 6th graders at our school, our 5th graders, and then also bringing in all the other Kippa kids. If they even choose to stay, they might just go back to elementary school, like the normal one that they would go to. Like, we'd have a whole different, like, learning thing. And for me, I've developed it for 2 years straight now. And then putting me into a different environment, like, now I have to relearn everything. And I'm going to be held back probably to that 7th grade standard next year instead of excelling into 8th grade and even 9th grade for math and ELA. But I'm just kind of disappointed that we voted on it too early. I feel like there was a lot more points that we could have made. But, I mean, can't change the decision now. But I would like to just hand this around to you guys and have you guys just look at all these wonderful things that the kids have said. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. So, Mr. Kleisner's informed me that we lost him, so I'm going to call up the next person, but if you wouldn't mind letting me get Mr. Kleisner back on the phone before you proceed. So, Randy Coltero? If you'll just give me just a minute. Mr. Kleisner?
Yes, thank you.
All right, we got you back.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm Randy Catero. I'm from Sugar Grove, a mother of 4 Kaneland students. Well, I guess 3 now because 1 is now graduated. At one time, I had a student at every single level of schooling, which gives you a wide, I get to know everybody and get to see where the disconnects are and what is going on. I'm here to support my Kipla student, and we've experienced education here at every level, from elementary to high school and even one child's graduation. Through all of that, we've seen how different children have different needs and how their experiences in school can profoundly shape their futures. But no experience has matched the quality of education that Ignite has provided for my student. We're McDole Elementary, by the way. It delivers. It's not good, it's exceptional. This program has given our children, my child, the chance to learn in ways that sparked her curiosity, built her confidence, and empowered her to take ownership of her education. This isn't just a conversation about saving one program or balancing a budget. It's about the direction that schools should take in general. Instead of cutting opportunities, we should be doubling down on their successes and expanding their reach. I just lost my place, I'm so sorry. Schools that embrace personalized learning models aren't just adapting to the times, they're leading the way, setting an example for what an education can and should look like in the 21st century. I can't stress how much of a difference it is for a child to take ownership in their learning. It leaps and bounds growth. They see their standards, they utilize the tools that they're given, and then they just grow. And I really hope with doing the changes to Kipla that it does succeed and continues, because I can't fathom her going back to the in-the-box learning. Like, it doesn't work for every child. And I know it with my oldest that is now not in the school anymore. It didn't work for him either. And if he would have had this opportunity, it would have been a great thing. And I'm also very tired of being guinea pigs. There's been a lot of, I have one child that was part of when we did the 4th, 5th grade together thing, and then she learned all 5th grade stuff, but then you guys took it away when she entered 5th grade, and so she never got to do the next level of education that should have been part of that. So I really think the disconnect is we don't follow through. We start a lot of programs and we do things, but we don't see them to the end or see to fruition instead of just, oh, we're scared to make change and go forth. I think you guys do amazing things, and I'm never usually a person that says anything, but I really, like, these kids are really doing great things there, and I'm sorry that I didn't get to speak before you guys. I would have come to every meeting in the world if I would have known it was happening.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Cotero. Okay, next up we have Amy Corbett.
Hi, I'm Amy Corbett from Elburn, and you've just heard from my son Joseph. Throughout the meeting, I thought about different things that were said just as a district, but also related to our students at Kipla. I alluded to the fact that we would see those test scores, and I know that we talk about our goal is for excellence, and a lot of these things were underperforming. I think just going back to saying eliminating the staff is going to affect those more, and if not, tell us how it's not. Eliminating staff, I know you said that you understand it's people. The way I look at it is staff have the opportunity, because they're adults, to go and find jobs in other districts if they want. But our students don't have that luxury unless mom and dad decide they want to move. And that's also a significant challenge that is presented to kids if the parents do decide to do that. Something that also made me curious is you talk about communication. How long ago did you guys know about this? And why are those meeting minutes from December wanting to go away? Like you voted to get rid of that. You are talking about this should have been communicated sooner for parents or other stakeholders to understand what was going on. This was a complete surprise to Ignite parents and staff when that happened less than a month ago. Something that I want to hold you all to is that you will communicate in the future and let us know. Yes, there's an agenda posted and there's dates, placeholders for our meetings, but we need to know more about what's happening. My last thing is we really need to have a transition plan for these kids. They were failed for the high school students that were moving on. They just got thrown into high school. It was, again, a last minute, hi, you're not going to high school at Kipla like you thought you were. They couldn't even register for the classes. It was too late. They got whatever they got. I also encourage you to have some sort of student involvement in that transition plan. What is their school going to look like when it's in Harder? What is their school going to look like when they're at John Shields? There's a lot of anxiety among the kids of what's next. What is it going to look like? Are my friends going to leave and go back to their own, home schools because of this? Is it going to dissolve? I felt like I heard it somewhere in here that there's expectation that it'll dissolve. And that's really unfortunate because there's a lot of people, the staff and administration that put a ton of effort into this, and parents and kids that put their faith in this.
Thank you for your comments, Mrs. Corbett. Next up, we have Scott Stockwell.
Hi, Scott Smolka again from Sugar Grove. Listening to a lot of the board conversations and the other parents, I think the one thing that I'd like to convey is to turn this into being proactive instead of reactive, which goes to what Mr. Minkowski and Dr. Lawler kind of mentioned, that you kind of get things in your reactionary. You know, you came and here it is, and then you had to act very quickly on it. And I've seen that over the past years be the situation. Now, how do we learn from that and do that? The one thing that I was sitting there thinking about is CAC has their agendas, at least some topics laid out for the year. Now, they don't meet as often, but you know you're gonna have staffing by this date, and you have to do it before spring break or by April 1st. So back up 3 meetings, you know, first conversation, second conversation, third conversation, or what those are populate them, you know, on the meeting date, so you kind of know. Then the public would have some idea of, hey, we're gonna start talking about this, or this is gonna be an issue, or we're gonna have capital projects to discuss, whatever those topics might be. The other thing I want to talk about is with the reductions, and I knew they were going to happen, just given the status and the timing and et cetera, how do we measure those and how do we monitor those as we move forward to do that well? You know, let's make the best of a bad situation. So we're doing the reduction, so how are we going to make sure that the students aren't further impacted? How are we gonna do touch bases? I mean, I don't think we can wait until, you know, next fall or whenever those times are. I think we need to do some checks on those to make sure that, you know, the kids that are being reintroduced from KIPLA to Harder or to Shields, with the reduction of the MTSS teachers, all of those, what is those impacts? How do we monitor and check in on those things? I think that'll be important as well to do the plan and do it as to the best we can as we move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next up, we have Hope Pascas.
Hi again, Hope Pascas, what will soon be the former LRC director at Harder. So, I do want to say first and foremost, this is not about my job. I have a job in the district. I've been here a very long time. This is about the position and what the position does. When I was a science teacher for 15 years, I always told my students, show me the evidence. I've not seen that evidence here for why this position is being cut. If it is based on money, the first board meeting where we talked about this, the money is $30,000. That's what the district said. That's the difference. If it's about being fair, cutting an entire certified position that covers an entire school is not fair. If it's about the ratio, and following what the state of Illinois has said is part of core investments, like it was with the assistant principals, that's not followed here. So again, I look for the evidence. If we are providing evidence that we care about student literacy and not reading, our kids can read. It's those advanced literacy skills. If we're saying we care about those, I can show you over 60 studies that have evidence that a certified librarian makes a difference, no matter the student's background, no matter where they come from. I want to see the evidence. I know we have to balance a budget, but I feel like we're balancing it on the backs of our staffs and our students. Because now those staff members will have to take over the lessons that I teach. They will have to do the research and figure out what resources they can use without support from me. Our elementary schools have had to do this for a very long time. And I will tell you now that I stand here with the same people that in 2010 sent the same message, 2011 sent the same message, 2013 sent the same message, and 2016 when all of the elementary LRC directors were gotten rid of. And now we will have one in the district to do all of those jobs. Jessica, I'm sorry, I tried. Thank you.
for your comments. Next up, we have Katie Sutterstrom.
Katie Satterstrom, resident of Elburn, parent of 2 kids in the district. You've all heard me before. Just wanted to come up here and give some initial thoughts, feedback, concepts pertaining to the budget in general overall, since most of my time has been spent with KIFLA. I want to make sure as a district that we do not lose sight of the fact that COVID has impacted our kids' education. We see that in our test scores. We see that in the reading scores, the reading levels, our kids' competencies in areas. We are going to constantly be fighting that battle for them. My daughter was a kindergartner during COVID. She is currently in 4th grade. Her education was absolutely impacted by COVID. She will be part of that group of kids who will be studied lifelong to see what happens to them, what they do, what they obtain. Student test scores are below state average, and state average isn't very high to begin with. Yet, zero consideration of anything other than student-facing positions was brought forward as the initial solution to this budget cut, to this deficit that the district holds. Why? On paper, the evidence is not here for that move. There is no easy solution, but where has the budget accountability and oversight been prior to the last few years? A $4.2 million deficit does not happen without warning. I also think we need to consider, how did the COVID federal funds delay this budget decision now, which most likely should have came to a head 5 years ago. And COVID federal funds have propped up this problem for this district and many others. Speaking as a taxpayer, why would I vote to provide the district with more taxpayer funding for the referendum when there is a long-term history of a lack of long-term planning and financial accountability? That is your biggest question and your biggest barrier to passing this referendum. And I don't think tonight's gonna do you any favors. There is a very real concern of the referendum not passing. For the fiscal year 25-26 budget, all of the capital projects projected to be covered by the referendum were removed from the fiscal year 25-26 budget. What is the plan to address these critical infrastructure needs moving forward? How much additional budget cuts will be needed, and where are you planning to target next? These are not going to go away. It's infrastructure. On a personal note, I want to acknowledge that while the COVID pandemic has officially ended, COVID federal funds to districts have ended, the continued needs of COVID impact on student education remains. Lastly, with the KIPLA program changing physical locations compounded with COVID impacts, my 4th grader will be attending her 4th physical school location in 6 years. Those are the kids you're educating. You can see that in the test scores.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
comments. Next up, Laura Ekstrom.
Hello, I'm Laura Ekstrom. You've all heard from me before. I have 2 kids in the district. They're both currently attending KIPLA. But I am actually going to talk to you today about the ELA curriculum. I know that Fontes and Pinnell is something that we've been using. I have some concerns about Fontes and Pinnell as a whole. One, on the Ed Reports standards, they do not meet the expectations of grade level alignment. They're at under what reading level should be on those curriculums, so that concerns me. There's also an ongoing lawsuit that's happening in the state of Massachusetts against Fontes and Pinnell, saying that they're essentially saying that they're better than they are. And then I have 2 students with reading disabilities, so you know, they obviously are like beyond the normal standard, but in my research on what helps students, repeatedly, Fontes and Pinnell, Lucy Calkins, that method is don't do it, don't go there, don't let people teach your kids that way. And that's how we're teaching our kids reading, and I think it shows in our test scores. I also did a little bit of research because I saw in the presentation that the Geneva School District jumped by 20 points in their reading from 23 to 24. They changed reading curriculums. So I think we need to look and see what they're using, because to me, 7.7 points is what all the other school districts did. That's not significant. But the 20 points Geneva did is. So what are they doing? How can we replicate that? Thanks so much.
Next up, we have Sheila Albano.
Sheila Albano from Elburn, and once again, everything I was going to say has morphed while I've been sitting here. So what I want to say is what no one up here can say, which is to Ms. Pasca's point, there's only one point that was exactly the same through all of those years that you mentioned, and it was none of them. That point is no longer with us, but that point controlled nearly everything for multiple years. What got done, what didn't get done, what got reported, what didn't get reported, how it got reported. And the Kiplo parents, young man, kudos to you, because standing up here is difficult for adults. So I'm extremely proud of you, and I want you to know you should be proud of yourself. Kipla as a program should never have been implemented as it was. It wasn't meant to be implemented as it was, except that a very, very small group of people wanted it to happen, and they made it happen in the poorest way possible. And you are the result of that poor planning. And your children are the result of that poor planning, and it didn't have anything to do with them. So now we have to face the fact that money was spent on that building, on that parking lot, on a number of things, instead of on the infrastructure stuff that we could have spent that money on while we built your program from the base up to get to a building that you could use and would be proud of. And those of us who watched that happen and were fighting against it because we knew we had expenses other places, were not heard. So my heart breaks for you. I wish it was different. And I want all of you to know that there are many of us in the district who absolutely agree with this cut on this building and moving you back where you are, but only because we know how it got started in the first place, and what we really want to do is help you maintain it. They're trying their best to keep it in any form at all. There's plenty of people who would be like, just get rid of it and start over. Help us to help you keep this in some fashion until we can get you back into that building in a proper way. I also just want to say, as somebody who's been here for years now, standing up and arguing and begging for things, I have had many discussions with people and begged them to be more transparent, begged them to listen to what we're doing. And this group of people actually did it, including Mr. Rolwing, who's only been here since January 1st officially, and Jackie, who, if you want financial information, she's going to give it to you. You would not have gotten that before. So I ask you to give them your trust, as difficult as that is, and let's all, again, be nice together and see how we can get through these problems to a better end.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Sullivan. Okay, last up we have Dan Pons.
Hello, my name is Dan Pons. I'm a teacher at Kaneland High School. I'm also the vice president of KEA. I'm going to split my time up for two things. The first one I'm going to talk about actually an organization that I'm with Drago Gudovic, DECA. So that organization, I don't know if you've heard much about it, but Kaneland's had it since '99. Some people went through the program, it was great. Around maybe I think it was like 2018, the program actually stopped. We were able to get it back up, and we now are up to 70 members. We went to sectionals. We actually had 18 people placed to go to state, which is awesome. And of those individuals, we had one team that finished 3rd overall, one individual that finished 4th. So the DECA program's definitely doing a phenomenal job. Mr. G's put a lot of work into it. We're working with those students. I just wanted to take this moment to give them definitely that recognition, and they did an awesome job. The second part, I would just like to talk about the vote that happened. I would like to encourage that everybody here takes this opportunity to make sure that you still get the input from all the stakeholders and collaborate as much as possible to limit any damage, when the final cuts are made. Board President Gonzalez made the point that the decisions that we're making today don't only impact the teachers that are, on that plan, but we're talking possible decades down the road. So I hope you definitely keep that in mind when you do decide on those final cuts. So, thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, that concludes the public comment portion of the meeting. So we will now proceed to closed session. The Board of Education is scheduled for a closed session to discuss Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1, but there will be no action taken following the session. Therefore, after the vote to go into closed session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded. At this time, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss Illinois Open Meetings Act 2C1 at 8:37 p.m.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kleisner?
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons?
Aye.
Mr. Cook?
Aye.
Mr. McCauley?
Aye.
Dr. Lawler?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Aye. Okay, we will now proceed to closed session.